Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm here in studio today with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore. How's it going today, Bill?
It is going fabulous. Thank you. We're having a rather hot day today, but I got out early and got my walk in, and now I'm marinating mushrooms to turn into jerky.
Oh, into jerky.
Oh yeah, it is absolutely delicious. It's fabulous. So and it's
What
good
kind
for.
of mushroom are we talking here?
I'm using. You can use any kind of mushroom you want to use, but I'm using portobellos.
Okay. It's not peyote.
No, peyote is not a mushroom.
Oh, it's not.
No, no, no. Peyote is not a mushroom.
Oh, it's a
It
cactus.
is part of the succulent family. Yeah. I there are some parts of the country where it's okay to do things with psilocybin mushrooms. Nebraska doesn't happen to be one of those. So I being not enamored with the idea of spending the rest of my golden years with a record for using illegal, substances, which, I have a problem with why we call them that. But anyway, no,
I've seen some T-shirts that say I'm old enough that the threat of life in prison isn't much of a deterrent anymore.
hey, I want to spend my time with my wife, not with Bubba in the adjoining bunk, So
No, I get it. I get it. All right. So today we're going to discuss do you want to buy an electric car, but unsure you can justify it? Some craziness that's coming out of Shellfish
yeah,
and EVs.
yeah,
Um, let's see. MIT creating a hydrogen fuel from a unique source.
right.
I've got something about.
Which many people drink every day. Ooh.
Yeah, I've got something about Model S Plaid, and then we've got something about people microwaving their batteries.
Well,
So
that too, and maybe we can stick in there a little bit about the study that's being done, looking at twins and Google Street View.
twins and Google Street. Oh, I
Twins and
didn't.
Google Straight View, yeah, or Street
Was
View.
that one of our articles? I didn't see that
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Well,
Oh,
I thought I notified you, but maybe I didn't. So
oh, you may have to help with that one.
I'll tell you about it. Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, let's start out with the shellfish story.
Okay.
So, scientists created a revolutionary EV battery derived from shellfish.
Hmm.
And so there's something unique in shellfish. They're found, oh, it's a combination of shellfish and zinc. Well, I mean, don't shellfish generally produce zinc?
Well, I don't think in the quantities that you need. No, what they're talking about here is the is it chitin? I think it is what they
Yeah,
make call it that, and that is the material. In fact, actually, I think don't we have that in our thumbs, fingernails? But anyway,
yeah.
so they found a way to use that chitin and mixing that with zinc to actually create a fairly durable and effective battery. I think the specifics were something like I don't what was it 400 cycles or something like that. Anyway, it looks like a promising thing. Although that being said, there's been over the years there's been work trying to figure out how to take that chitin from shrimps and things like that are ending up as waste and then turning that into a recyclable plastic. So they're trying to come up with some really interesting things. But the battery with chitin, shellfish, looks like an interesting approach. I mean, we're calling
It's
this
complete. Here's a couple things here.
weird technology day to day, right?
Yes, weird science. So the shellfish batteries are completely biodegradable and they'll break down in around 5 months. So if you stop using, I don't know exactly where they biodegrade, but so that always makes me wonder. It's like, well, how useful is it? It says that after 400 hours of use, the batteries were still 99.7% efficient.
Yeah.
So
Well,
Now,
I presume that what they're talking about there, the biodegradable thing, is when the battery reaches its natural lifespan because the chemistry inside begins to mean it can't hold charges and things like that. That rather than it ending up in landfill somewhere, they can take and process it and recapture. And we'll talk about that with the microwaving lithium and the other
yeah.
story
So
that they can take and get those materials back out of it.
about 3 weeks ago, there was some news article that came out that we didn't cover that I've had somebody reference a couple times in a couple of videos, and he was talking about something being found in the soil around where they manufacture lithium batteries, and as this negative, like, forever chemical that they're finding some of these things. And I've kind of wondered how legit this was, because I pretty much everything I found on the topic referenced back to the same one article.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's really hard to take some of that as being true. It's kind of like the whole thing of the EV tires
Right.
rotting down, and for every 4,000 miles, and the battery pads being
I'm
worn
still not
down.
on my rims, on my
Yeah.
Fiat. So
Well, we knew when it talked about the EV battery pads, or brake pads wearing down super fast, that something wasn't right.
no.
Since most EV owners don't use their brakes, but that was, you know, that was just, you just have to take some of this with a grain of salt, because you
Yeah.
really can't tell
Well,
how legitimate it is.
yeah, you wonder, in the age of disinformation,
Yeah. Well,
how much of that, how much of that stuff you have to be anymore. You have to take, what's said with a grain of salt, and do Snopes searches on it, and and background and all. Oftentimes, well, okay, where'd this article come from? Well, it's this guy who is a fellow with this institute, and I said, okay, what's this institute? Who are they? What do they believe? And you look them up and you find, oh, I see, they're funded by the oil companies, or they're,
right.
um, some
No, I get it. Well, in this
political
particular
action.
case, one of the things they mentioned in this article was that the shellfish batteries, because they kind of referenced it, they said that chemicals in typical batteries, such as lithium ion, can take centuries to break down, can be harmful to the environment. Now, when I was talking about this article, though, talking about lithium ion batteries, it wasn't car battery manufacturing. So it was just places making batteries like for your flashlight.
Mhm.
It was just something more in general than making
Well,
EV
yeah, and I
batteries.
guess I have to take exceptions with even the comment that they take centuries to break down and things like that. It depends on what's. I mean, any battery is a soup of a lot of different chemicals. Most of which can be reclaimed. I mean, what is it? Lead acid batteries. They are able to reclaim, I don't know, 70% of all those batteries globally and things like that, and then repurpose and reuse the lead in them. So, I would find a little suspect. Again, and when we get to the story on microwaving batteries, we'll find out that there's a way to address the problem of being able to capture, and the term they use, precipitate out those chemicals, and then use those chemicals, over again. So, I mean, that's where we're going. Everybody, we recognize that, you know, uh, for some companies, it's a lot cheaper just to dump you know, their stuff and forget it. And in Pennsylvania, they found a bunch of the oil fracking companies were traveling around Pennsylvania, secretly dumping their fracking water into ditches and along country roads and things like that, all over the state of Pennsylvania. So they've got
Wow.
so you've got unethical people who have one thought in mind: maximize profit, maximize our gain, and eliminate whatever costs that we would have to pay for. So doesn't surprise me that something like that would happen.
No, I get that. So let's go ahead. I want to talk about this one. This one's kind of funny. So Elon Musk responds to a video of Tesla Model S Plaid reaching a record hypercar speed. Now,
Yeah,
somebody took a Model S Plaid and they took some things out of it to make it a little bit lighter. I mean, they probably
right.
removed the rear seats and they probably did a few other things, but it did this is where it gets really crazy. Did an 8.56 second quarter mile it was at 162
Wow.
miles per hour. Yeah.
Wow.
So when
Because normal, just for reference, normally drag racers are in the 10, if they're really good, they're down in the tens, and
yeah,
generally they're in the 11s or 12 second. So yeah,
yeah, so it was second only to a Pininfarina Batista, which did it in 8.55 versus the 8.56.
yeah.
So it was a hundredth of a second slower. It was faster by 0.02 seconds than the Rimac Navara, which that was really
Yeah.
impressive. Um, but they did remove some components to make it faster. But there were some other stats on this. It did 0 to 60 in 1.80. It did 0 to 130 to 130 miles per hour in 5.54 seconds. It'd be a fast time 0 to 60. They're at 130. Um, and
So what was Elon's reaction? He just reposted or what?
he just more or less reposted new Model S Plaid quarter mile time.
Oh,
It
okay.
was all, but still, that's pretty incredible. Now, the Model S Plaid is capped at 166 miles per hour.
Okay.
So while it would be capable of going 200 plus, if it wasn't capped, they do cap it at that because there's components on the car that aren't
Aren't
designed for the
designed for
extreme
that. Yeah.
speeds.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
I told you one of my friends that drives a Model S as his daily driver has 3 Lamborghinis, and um, he says that
In a barn somewhere, right?
the Model S is faster than the other cars, like in a straight line, but
Yeah.
it doesn't handle it like
Yeah.
a race car
Right.
like the other ones do. So it's completely different, especially on a track or something like that, going around a track. It's a completely different
Yeah,
feel.
that's what it was. Yeah, it wasn't engineered for that. So that's
Right. Yeah. It doesn't have the right tires, a lot of other things that are different in that
suspension.
regard.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and let's talk about microwave technology.
Yeah,
So
this is
microwave
interesting.
technique recovering 87% of batteries lithium in 15 minutes.
Yeah. So what this article is that they were this particular, I think it's Rice University, I believe that's what the story was from. We're looking for ways to enhance, speed up, if you will, the process of recovering chemicals that we talked about earlier from batteries that are being recycled. And typically, one of the methods, more widely used methods, is a process that uses some type of an oil. And it takes many hours for the lithium and these other things to, and I think the word they use is precipitate out so they can capture. And typically, lithium is one of the last things to get out of the battery. So they were thinking, well, is there any way we can speed this up? So they came up with a soup, if you will, that is chlorine and chloride. I think they mix those two together, and then they put what do they call that? The black. There's a term that they use when they grind up the batteries and they get the black material that has all these chemicals that are lithiums and the cobalts and the nickel and all that they take and put this with this, I forget the name of it, but with this chlorine and chloride material, and then subject it to a microwave. And instead of it taking hours to recover the lithium, it only takes 15 minutes.
Oh,
So
wow.
that could completely speed up that process. And interestingly, they say they can fine tune the chemistry of that soup that they use to improve the efficiency of extracting other targeted metals out of the battery. What they have now is targeting lithium, but they could target cobalt and nickels and coppers or whatever else there may be in that black mass. I forget the name that they call that, but the black material that is used, to begin the process of recovering these batteries so they can be reused. I mean, when you think about it, these are just basic minerals, right? I mean, and they can be, when extracted, it's not that they're evaporate into the atmosphere or something and they go away like, hydrocarbons. These materials can be recaptured and repurposed and reused. And that's as part of the idea of a circular, wow, can't say it, circular economy. This is where we want to be, where instead of this stuff going through one lifespan and getting buried in a landfill, we can find a way to just keep using it over and over and over again, which means we have to do less mining, right? And less disruption. In fact, there's an article about the impact of mining in Africa on the wildlife there, and particularly on the mountain gorillas. So we don't, we want to have those creatures still, enjoying this planet with us. So we got to learn how to do these things better, more efficiently, at a lower cost. And this microwave approach seems like it shows promise to be able to do that.
Well, that would be pretty good. I see people say, oh, there's nothing set up to recycle batteries. And it's like, well, we mostly talk about repurposing batteries, but at some point they're going to have to do this extraction and actually recycle them. But it may be 20 years before, EV batteries are
these guys, obviously,
recycled on large scale.
Yeah, these guys are just at lab scale of this stuff, right? And what will it take to get it up to commercial scale, and when will we have enough batteries that reach that point to be able to justify the expense and the investment? So we're probably maybe a decade or so from that point, but it's nice to know that people are looking at this and coming up with potential feature solutions.
Okay, that's good. That's good. All right, let's go ahead and let's talk about our next weird science topic, and that is what they're doing at MIT with hydrogen. So it says they're going to create hydrogen fuel from soda cans, seawater, and caffeine. Now, I don't drink seawater on a regular basis.
No, you don't. Okay, so let's step back. When I first got into this whole world of electric vehicles, hence the name, one of the very first things that I learned was that you could take an aluminum can, soda can, and you could take and turn that into hydrogen. This is cool. And so there's been multiple experiments through the decades trying to figure out how to use aluminum as a storage medium for hydrogen to power fuel cells or power internal combustion engines or jet engines or whatever. So what these guys have done there at MIT is they have looked at taking aluminum pellets, because I think they said that one, and I forget the size, but it looks like a rather large ball bearing, right?
Okay.
That you can, from that pellet, or BB, for want of a better term, you can take and get 1 liter of hydrogen. So imagine you've got your fuel tank now is full of I'm going to use the term BBs, right? And you can, and every one of those BBs would be run through this process that then converts it over to hydrogen. And then you can use that probably to, in your fuel cell, probably makes the most sense. But they found that while there are different ways to get that, they found that if you take and use seawater in this process, and you add a chemical component that is found in caffeine, you can accelerate the process and make it much more efficient. And I forget the name of it's probably there in the article, the name of what that chemical's, Eloan or something or another like
Gallium, indium?
Yeah. Well, no, what was it?
Gallium indium, or it could be
No,
gallium indium.
no. There was something else. There's another name for it in the article. But anyway, they found that it is a component of caffeine. So you can take that material, mix that with seawater and those aluminum pellets, and you can create hydrogen, which suddenly you now have a lightweight fuel that that can power all kinds of things. And I'm thinking probably aircraft would be, to me, maybe the most logical use of that technology, because it's a compact source. I don't know. I've done some stories in the past where this sort of a similar concept, and that the byproduct, you could take the byproduct from that, then you keep that on board the vehicle, be it a truck
Okay.
or a car or whatever. And you can then take that canister of the spent material and then run it back through a processor, and then completely, if you will, recharge it to reconstitute it so it can be used again. Now, if that's what they're doing with this, I'm not exactly sure if they're.
So one of the things in their testing, they were trying all kinds of random stuff. They tried coffee grounds, and the component in the coffee grounds is imidazole,
Yep,
which is a component of
that's
caffeine.
it. Yeah, that's it.
Imidazole.
Yeah, imidazole. Yeah.
The molecule structure can pierce the surface of aluminum, increasing the available surface area for hydrogen production.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
So
crazy the things people can invent or figure out in a lab.
Coffee grounds, right?
Yeah. They
How
just
much coffee grounds do we generate from just the Starbucks network?
Right. Oh, I'm sure it's a ton.
So anyway, so we got waste seafood shells, right? Crab and oysters and shrimp and things like that for this. Now we've got coffee grounds that we can use to create hydrogen with. Wow, what else are we going to come up? I'm still waiting for dilithium crystals.
There you go. Well, they are coming out with the DeLorean EV that goes 0 to 88 in 4 seconds.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well,
I was looking at one of the articles is talking about testing aboard a small underwater vehicle that can collect seawater to run the reaction. They've calculated that 40 pounds of aluminum should provide enough power for 30 days at sea.
Yeah.
This hydrogen reactor could power other kinds of vehicles like trucks and trains.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just fascinating, some of the things they come up with. And I really thought, we talked last week about the Nikola Walmart deal with hydrogen. And I think that's probably the biggest hope I've seen for hydrogen in the whole time we've been doing the show together, because everything else is just kind of like, that doesn't really seem like it's going to do anything. No, but the whole Nikola Walmart deal seems to me like it's going to actually give hydrogen some real teeth, and that's probably more than any other commitment I've seen from anybody else, because Walmart could really make that happen.
Yeah, or Starbucks takes their coffee grounds
yeah,
and makes hydrogen on the premise to run different things in there. And they can then take whatever excess they have and store that, and then use that to power the delivery trucks to them, or whatever, EV customers they may have that are driving fuel cell cars. So, boy, this could really, because we know they're building a chain, right? They're building a chain of charging stations, along the interstate system, basically west of the Rockies, from I think, Seattle to Salt Lake. So that'd be interesting.
Having been in the venture capital space, and I see amazing ideas all the time that just seem revolutionary, like they could change the world in some industry, and invariably they can't ever attract investors. Or enough investors to make their product come to fruition. Or if they do, they're not capable of executing, which was a big reason why a lot of them don't get money in
Yeah.
the first place is because so many have a history of not being able to make the dream happen once
Yeah.
they actually have access to the capital.
Yeah.
And so when you have some people that make it through, like you look at like the thing with SpaceX. I've heard Elon talk about, well, our first three launches failed. If the fourth one had failed, we were bankrupt, and the
Yeah.
fourth one worked.
Yeah.
And so it hadn't been for that, SpaceX was bankrupt. You know, when you look at all the things with Tesla, if something hadn't happened, Tesla was bankrupt, and they were just on the verge of
And
things. And you,
where would we be? Still flogging internal combustion engines. So,
yeah.
whoops, sorry.
So there's the whole thing about FedEx would have went under. They wouldn't have made payroll one time. Fred Smith went and gambled,
Went and
and at
gambled
a
and won.
casino,
Yeah.
and won. I don't know if that story is really true. A lot of people claim it's true. You know, I have a hard time believing, just due to the nature of casinos, that they would have
Yeah.
let him
Yeah.
place a multi-million
Yeah.
dollar bet for one hand. They really rely on you going
Lady
in.
Fortune smiled on him that day.
Yeah, they really rely on you playing for hours and hours till you lose. Like you can't beat the house over several hours, but you might beat
Yeah.
the house on a single hand.
Yeah.
But anyways, you know, so a lot of these great ideas, I love seeing them, but getting them to
Yeah.
market and people
Yeah.
actually executing. You look at even Toyota with how much they've done in hydrogen, and then they
Still
get sued by Mariah owners.
right.
And part of it is because the hydrogen stations, half of them closed.
Yeah.
And that's not Toyota's fault. Toyota didn't own the hydrogen stations, but if there's no fuel for the hydrogen cars, it's a
Yeah.
problem. That's why I'm saying, like the whole thing with Walmart, it's like, well, that's brilliant because Walmart has gas stations now,
Right.
and if they have all the trucks,
They got trucks, semi trucks pulling into those stores. What?
yeah,
Several times a day? I don't know what
yeah.
the frequency is.
There's no question that electric semis in the right environment, where maybe they're a daily driver, they're going out on a
Mhm.
route and back and
Right.
plugging in at the shop, makes a lot of sense. I'm
Yep.
still not convinced that we're going to see Tesla semis as the, or similar as the constant going over the road, going
Yeah.
across the country, state to
Yeah,
state.
and actually, I think we talked about this before. If you look the statistics on this, is that I don't know, it's at least 40% of the trucks that are out there. And again, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but I mean the majority of the distance that is traveled by the majority of your commercial freight carrying trucks, and by freight I mean full loads and partial loads, and things. Most of them are all local. Local with defined as within 200 miles. And the number of actual ones that drive from Long Beach to Detroit, or Long Beach to Baltimore, or wherever they're going,
Mhm.
is a relatively small number of vehicles. And the real money making is not on the over long distance hauls, but the real money maker for businesses are their local haul, their local shipments, the guys that are hauling, restaurant supplies, or the guy, out there on 132nd Street, we've got all those soda bottlers, right? The Dr.
Oh,
Peppers.
132nd is Amazon too.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, and just the other side of the interstate, you got all the the beer distributors, and and those, and you drive through there and you see all these trucks, or in the evening you see all the trucks parked and lined up for start deliveries the next day.
Yeah.
So they're not driving from Omaha to Salt Lake City, right? They're people do that, but the majority of all those businesses are just local within a, I don't know, 200-mile radius.
I had a chat with an Amazon driver a couple days ago, and I was asking him how he likes the Rivian vans. He goes, "Oh, they're great when I get to drive them." He said, "Where I'm at, they keep sticking me with the gas vans. I hate them."
I've heard that
And
was the two drivers I talked to. That was the same response. Yeah,
yeah, he
they
said,
hate
"When I drive
driving
the
those.
gas vans, I got to take the keys out. The air conditioner doesn't keep running when I'm making a drop." And he said, "You're making a drop like every 30 seconds. The air conditioner doesn't
Yeah,
have time to turn on."
yeah,
And he said, "You have to put on the gas ones, you have to put on the emergency brake." He said there's 4 extra steps every time they stop. They
that is
have to take.
interesting.
that they don't have to take with the Rivian van, because the Rivian van, as soon as they take the foot off the pedal, the car's basically turned off.
Right.
And then we touch it again, it's going again. It's
Right.
either in a state of 0 or 1. It's very
Yeah.
binary. And it's either on or off, as opposed to, it's never in idle. But even when it's in idle, the air conditioner keeps going. Or when it's off, the air conditioner keeps running. He said he just hates getting the gas vans, because they're just, they're slow. They don't have all those other features. And he said it actually makes it more tedious just to do the job.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of interesting comment. But that's, I was telling you one time, I was with one of my friends, and he borrowed a gas car down in Arizona, and we got out and he left the car running, and he's just so used to his Tesla. Just when he gets out, it just turns off and locks itself. Yeah. It knows to lock up when he walks away. And then when he comes back, it knows to turn back on.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's really hard to fathom that a car, cars are becoming that intelligent. I saw a little thing once. It's like, it was going back to like, 2001: A Space Odyssey or whatever. And like the computer's like, Dave, we can't do that, or something like that. Or Dave, you can't drive there,
Right.
and trying to tell the astronaut what he can and can't do, with the AI, the computer didn't want to do.
I had an interesting. I'm working on a project that I'm using an AI as a collaborator with me, because there are questions I have as I'm developing this, and I could go look it up, right? But it's so much easier just to say, hey, tell me about this, right? Or tell me about this person, or what do you know about this, right? Well, example, this morning, I'm doing my mushrooms, right? Well, I have to boil the mushrooms, and I have this pot of water. And what I thought, well, gee, I hate to throw that down the drain, because it's probably valuable minerals and things in it. What can I do with it? So what I did was I reduced it down, and I got it to where it's a nice kind of a thick broth. And so I asked the AI, hey, I've got this reduction of mushroom wastewater. What can I do to turn that into a mushroom soup? And it gave me a recipe.
Oh, nice.
of how what I need to do, so many cups of this and so many teaspoons of that and so on, to make a mushroom soup out of the water that I would have normally tossed down the drain, which I have before. So, I mean, it is so handy having that now as an aid that can do everything from doing research on the cameras in the U2, and I'll leave that as a teaser, to, can I use this to make a nice homemade soup from, so that's changing the world, at least it's certainly changing my world.
Yes.
And how did we get on that subject?
Well, we were talking about the AI and the Tesla knowing, just certain things, and how the Rivian van, seems to know that the guy needs it not to be 105 degrees in the Rivian van, so it keeps cooling it off while he's out delivering packages. And the guy was saying, and the problem is we're in these vans and they're watching us the whole time. They got all these cameras on in there, and when you have the gas vehicle, you have all these little hassle things that if you're not doing them, they'll reach out to you and tell you, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that, And he said on the Rivian vans, you don't have to do those things. So even though they may be watching you, there's nothing.
So it improves.
You're not doing anything wrong. They just made the job easier.
Yeah, just improves productivity, helps with employee morale, and at the same time, it's putting no pollutants into the immediate environment, right?
So, but they're not doing anything with mushrooms in those vans.
No, they're not doing. Well, hey, some of my mushroom spawn has come that way.
Yeah.
No, I've got that through the mail, my mushroom spawn. All of this are not cultured, gourmet mushrooms. Okay, I'm not doing weird stuff, right? I'd like to learn more about psilocybin, but no, I'm not doing that stuff. I'm doing gourmet mushrooms kinds you eat,
Yeah.
in stores and things. So
All
anyway,
right. So our last article we had today was you want to buy an electric car, but unsure how you can justify it. Here are the arguments against EVs stack up.
yeah,
So let's start with
it's a
driving
good
range.
article.
Yeah. In 2014, electric vehicles top driving range between 160 and 210 kilometers. So 210 kilometers is about, 140 miles, maybe 130, 140.
Yeah.
Yeah. And today, most can do 2 to 3 times that amount.
Yep.
Okay. Most can do up to about, this looks like this came from Australia, probably.
Yes,
We seem to get a lot of articles from Australia because they're a pretty big EV adopter. They're real big on green energy.
They don't have any issue with having Chinese vehicles being imported into the country.
And so they have them. Yes.
So they have them. Yeah.
Yeah. EV driving range increases on average by about 10% per model year. From 2018 to 2022, a 4-year period, the average jumped from 143 miles to 210 miles. That's a pretty big jump. And now there's so many of them that are over 300.
Yes.
Next was access to chargers. And many drivers worry about finding a public charger. It's common to see, now this is in Australia, to see long queues at public charging stations or owners searching for a charger. But 90% of owners charge at home or work. So it's really only a challenge for long distance travel.
If you're going to drive, from Adelaide to Melbourne or something like that.
Now, not everybody has off-street parking. So this is where there are challenges if you're in a situation where you don't control your parking space. So it's a challenge in apartment complexes, things like that. Oh, got somebody saying hello from the bread man. Yeah, I don't know if the bread man delivers bread in an EV or not.
I don't
know. Anyways, but let's see. Oh, purchasing price. So now these numbers are Australian dollars. In 23, the average price, this is a huge difference, of an Australian petrol car was $40,900 compared to $117,700. So the EVs were almost triple the price in Australia.
Australian dollars. Let's make sure.
Which is interesting because you can buy BYD in that country. So the people weren't buying BYD; they were buying more expensive. But the problem with the averages is they're skewed by outliers. There are lots of very expensive outliers in the EV market. Or a Porsche Taycan Turbo S is 374,000 Australian dollars, or a Mercedes. I didn't even know they had this. There's an AMG EQS 53. So the EQS is super expensive here, but I didn't know this is an additional level. This is an AMG. It's 327,000 Australian dollars. So I think the Australian dollar is about 50%. Or the US dollar is worth about 50% more.
I haven't looked, and
so those numbers like 327,000 is probably still over 200,000 US. 3 models account for 70% of electric vehicle sales. The Tesla Model Y, which is about 61,000 Australian there, which it's currently now down to around 40,000 here. And then on top of that, what do we got? Oh, the BYD Atto. It actually is 48,000 over there. And the Tesla Model 3.
That getting down to the price range of what the gas cars are then.
Yeah, so they're close. The Model 3 entered our market in 2019 at 66,000. Now it's down to 58. But that's a 20% or 16 to 20% drop. We're doing good, Yogi. Doing good.
Thank you.
Let's see. Oh, let's see. Secondhand value. Then one of the other big concerns was how are they going to hold up? This is one of the areas where EVs depreciate quickly, but there's a couple of reasons. Now I'm reflecting more on the US. For starters, if you get a $7,500 credit on a new EV here in the United States, that basically depreciated the car $7,500 too, because your used buyer isn't going to pay that.
No.
Okay. And then, so
At best, they'll get 4.
yeah. And, then you add regular depreciation on top of that. It makes EVs look like they depreciate a lot in that first year, but a lot of it is because you had the 7,500 come off the top. Then you probably still had close to 20% depreciation on the car in that first year anyways.
I wonder, does insurance, there's been a couple of articles here recently about how insurance in China is causing a problem for the insurance companies there, because they're taking some significant losses due to a whole bunch of different factors.
Well, the big one is always the EVs, because you have a lot of the gigacasting going on, are more expensive to fix in an accident.
Yeah.
So some of the things that are making the cars be less expensive to build at the same time are also making them more expensive to
repair.
fix.
And there's a shortage of people that know how to repair them, and the people that know how to work on them. So,
There's no question. Well, and that was the next thing, was insurance costs. Insurance typically on an EV is about 20% higher than other cars. And car insurance has been going up astronomically on all kinds of cars for the last couple of years. Now, a lot of people.
Speaking of which, did you see the video of the flooding in China?
No.
Oh my God, they have had a huge problem there. And of course, they've gotten torrential rains, and they've had to release water out of the Three Gorges Dam. So there's this video has been shot of all of these cars floating down the main street of a lot of different Chinese towns. And I'm thinking, hopefully they're covered by insurance, but what kind of a, hit is that going to take the insurance companies? Because you have and it's very serious and fairly widespread flooding that's been going on there.
Well, we've had it near here. We've had, you look at all the damage we've had from hail, and then we've had the floods just a little bit up north of us.
Oh, well, they're only dimpled darlings. Have you seen the ads where they're trying to sell their pickup trucks? Well, it's just minor damage. They're dimpled darlings. So, yeah.
Dimpled darlings, yeah. Let's see. Then the next one is, a recent study suggests electric vehicles are actually more environmentally damaging than petrol or diesel, because those are so much cleaner.
Sure.
Yeah. They're typically heavier, resulting in more tire wear and heavier braking, which we know isn't true, as this produces small particulate matter. Oh God. The difference is minuscule between a EV and a gas car. But I've seen people talk about, with an EV, you do have to make sure you are rotating tires much more often.
Yeah.
So that's an important issue.
I need to do that on mine. I've probably got 10,000 miles or a little over that on mine without rotating, so I need to do that.
Yep. And the last big issue is slavery in the supply chain, because we all know that EVs are made with slave labor.
Yeah.
Little kids being chained up to a post and forced to make electric vehicles. No, I mean, so electric vehicles require cobalt. 70% of the world's supply comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now they're trying to break this down. It says 20% of this mining activity are those small informal subsistence mines with little or no mechanization, and often use child labor. Well, there's no real statistics on that.
There's no formal schooling system in many of these areas. The families are impoverished. They are like where we were, let's say 150 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have child labor laws when there were mills that needed little hands to thread the looms, so that's it's a situation, and it needs to be improved, and maybe hopefully someday that will be improved. But the amount of cobalt that is there's probably more cobalt that is mined for your cell phone.
Right.
than is generally used in batteries, because car makers understand that, battery makers understand that, and they're shifting over to chemistries, right, that don't require cobalt or don't require as much cobalt. That's what the lithium ferrous oxide, or lithium ferrous phosphate, sorry, lithium ferrous phosphate's all about. There's no cobalt. Now,
Right.
you don't get quite as much range as if it had cobalt in it, but you're not, trading in blood cobalt.
Well, like I said before, like, okay, so let's make those children who were mining it, let's make them now all of a sudden not work and not eat.
Yeah,
Let's let them
yeah,
die of starvation so somebody can be happy that there was no cobalt in your battery.
yeah,
I'm not saying that one makes the other thing better, but just saying that, there's a lot of different ways to look at how things
yeah.
operate in the world. A lot of times you take good with the bad, and it's just kind of
Well,
how things are. Because
the
especially when you look at
problem,
how laptops and cell phones both
yeah,
use
yeah,
the
yeah,
item.
yeah. The problem is recognized, and solutions are being worked on, and solutions are available today. You can buy a Tesla that does not have any batteries with cobalt in it. You can buy, I don't know where we're at in terms of cobalt and cell phone batteries, because that's not an area that I even bother, you know,
No, I
focusing
know.
attention on. So.
Anyways, well, Bill,
Okay.
that's all I've
Okay.
got for today. Unless you
Oh,
want to talk about,
yeah,
you had one other thing.
one more thing. I wanted to talk about the study that is being done by a couple of researchers who happen to be twins, and they were looking by using Google Street View. They have been analyzing what the impact is of having a more environmentally friendly, walkable city and neighborhood health wise. And so they've looked at something like 2 million people in this study,
Oh,
and
wow.
half of those people are, I think, are identical twins, right? To study to see what the difference is if you live in a city that has that is much less automotive focused and is much more focused on developing biking infrastructure, separate, safe biking infrastructure, and walking infrastructure. What is the impact on that? And so their study looked at twins, hundreds of thousands of twins that live in different neighborhoods, and what's the impact on their health. And they found that in fact there is a very perceptible difference in improved health of the one twin over the other if that twin happens to live in a more walkable city neighborhood environment. So
I
that
think that
those
would
kinds
only make
those kinds
sense.
yeah, those kinds of things really intrigue me. So
If you go to someplace like Venice Beach in LA, you don't really see overweight people.
no,
And
no.
but everybody's out walking around all the time. I mean, there's definitely something to be said
And
about
there's a
ditching
little,
the car and walking.
yeah, and there's a little bit also to be said about vanity here, right? Because a lot of those people are the way they are because they wanted to be that way and they want to show it off in Venice Beach. But
Right,
that being
I
said,
get that, but I'm
the
just saying, like, I'm not talking about just like right on the beach. I'm just saying, like, I've stayed in Venice Beach a lot with a friend, and he lives a couple blocks from the water,
right,
and everywhere I go, I just walk, and but it didn't matter if you walked a mile away from the beach. It is still
yep,
everybody kind of looked that way. Now I realize economically those people are better off. Okay, and that has a big effect on it. But
yeah.
just the fact that people are out and about walking as opposed to just driving everywhere.
The community encourages you to do that, right? You just don't
Yeah,
have you don't have to take a car. Why take the car when you can just as easily bike or walk
yeah,
or to
yeah.
pick
It's
up?
not really so much a factor of whether they're in an electric car or not. It's just
Yeah,
you know just getting out and doing stuff as
no,
opposed to
just
driving.
leave. I don't care. Leave the car there and walk, right?
Yeah.
And that's why, my wife and I have a new regimen now. We've had, fortunately, the weather where every morning we're out. She walks her route, and I walk, my route, and we're actually starting to feel a little better, and I'm a little more comfortable tucking my shirt in rather than leaving it out to cover
Mhm.
my, my bulge. So Yeah, so no, there's, and if you go back and look at some of the photographs. I have some other research I've done a long time ago on Omaha, and you find all those photographs of the 1900s and 1920s. You don't see any obese people
Nope.
on the streets. They just
Nope.
aren't there. Everybody, now they may be wearing funny looking clothing, right? But nobody is obese. Now that isn't
Nope.
to say that there weren't people like that, but at least on a normal, day when that photograph was taken, they're just not there.
Just
That's
didn't exist. No,
no,
it's fascinating that it's changed. Well, anyways, Bill, that's all we've got for today.
that's enough.
I
Thank you,
appreciate the
everybody.
show. Folks, thanks for chiming in and listening to us ramble on. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow with Mike. And
Rambling with
otherwise,